My sister called me evil for using her baby name, so I proved just how right she was. Ever since my sister and I were little, she was obsessed with copying everything I did. She copied the classes I took and tore up my homework if I got better grades, then went crying to our parents saying I destroyed hers. She stole and ripped up my exact clothes too, even when she already had identical ones, just so I couldn't have them. She even seduced and ended up in bed with my first ever boyfriend, even after claiming he wasn't her type. That one incident ended our relationship. We went separate ways after high school, and we even skipped each other's weddings entirely. Well, about a year ago I made the announcement on social media that I'm pregnant, and somehow, 8 weeks later, my sister made the exact same announcement too. The thing is, we still didn't have a relationship, so we didn't speak or attend any events. I had no idea if the pregnancy was even real or fake, until I gave birth to my son Xander 1 week ago. I got congratulations from everyone, and then, just 3 days later, my sister called me. First time in over a decade. She didn't say hi, hello, or anything like that. Instead, she started screaming so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. She started claiming I'd stolen her baby name, the one she'd allegedly dreamed about since childhood. That was a lie. She'd always said she wanted the name Kai, coincidentally the name I thought I'd want to name my son when I was younger. Anyway, my sister ranted for 40 minutes straight about how I'd calculated this perfectly just to hurt her. According to her, I was a pathetic copycat who couldn't have an original thought, so I had to steal from my pregnant sister who deserved happiness more. When I tried to explain that I hadn't even spoken to her for 10 years and how could I know the name she wanted, she hung up and called our mother to report my cruelty. Mom knew our relationship and she refused to take sides, which sent my sister into an absolute spiral of rage. Within hours, my sister posted a 3,000-word manifesto on Facebook about women who steal baby names from pregnant family members. Everyone knew she meant me because she'd tagged half our relatives. I knew she wanted me to respond, but I didn't. And so, she started going even crazier. The text started at midnight and didn't stop until dawn. Hundreds of messages calling me pathetic, evil, diseased, and broken. She even threatened to show up at my house to reclaim what was hers. After the 20th unhinged call in 2 days, each more deranged than the last, I finally started recording everything on my husband's phone. And thank God I did. Because one night she called from a blocked number at 3 a.m. Her voice was different this time, flat and cold like she'd crossed some terrible line in her mind. She said if she couldn't name her baby Xander, maybe she shouldn't have a baby at all. The stress you've caused might make me lose it anyway, she said. Or maybe I'll just help it along. It would be your fault, you know. You called my baby by stealing its name. My blood went ice cold. She kept talking in that dead voice about how it would be my fault, how I'd murdered her child by taking away its identity. She described exactly how she'd do it, the methods she'd researched, how everyone would know I drove her to it. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone steady. The recording captured every horrifying word for 7 minutes straight. I didn't even respond, just hung up and woke my husband up to talk. We worked through everything, and that's how we set the trap. The next morning, when everything was ready, I took a deep breath and called my sister. With fake defeat in my voice, I told her she could have the name Xander. A baby's life was worth more than a name. She practically screamed in victory. She asked me how it felt to come in second place. I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle her, but I didn't. I feigned defeat. Over the next few weeks, as she got closer and closer to delivery, she started getting cocky. She started telling everyone on social media that I'd finally admitted to being a thief and a copycat. She posted ultrasound photos with baby Xander written across them, tagging me in every single one. I stayed silent because I knew what was coming. 4 weeks later, our mother called from the hospital in hysteria, barely able to form sentences. I just smiled because I knew what she was about to say. My sister had just delivered her baby Xander when 2 social workers entered with 3 security guards. They explained they were there for a mandatory welfare check. The moment they said those words, she started laughing like something out of a horror movie. She thought they were joking. Until they took out a copy of the audio recording they had that I had given them. From what my mom said, her face went pale. She realized what was happening and immediately went into crazy mode. She clutched the newborn so tight the nurses grew visibly alarmed about the baby's circulation. The authorities rushed to check if the baby was even breathing properly, and that's when she grabbed the metal IV pole and swung it like a baseball bat. Blood from her delivery was still dripping down her legs as she backed into a corner, throwing medical equipment at anyone who approached. She was not letting go. The security team formed a protective barrier while the psychiatrist tried to talk her down, but she wasn't listening to anyone. She kept screaming that I'd made her do this, that I'd forced her hand by stealing her baby's name. The nurses managed to pry the baby from her grip just as she collapsed, blood loss making her movement sluggish. I drove to the hospital against my husband's wishes. He thought I should stay away, but I needed to see this through. The moment I pushed through the emergency room doors, I could hear her screaming from somewhere deep in the building. The sound made my skin crawl. Security tried to stop me at first, but when I explained I was the sister she kept mentioning, they exchanged looks and let me pass. One of them escorted me to the psychiatric wing where they'd moved her after stabilizing her physically. The scene in her room was chaos. She'd barricaded herself behind an overturned hospital bed, clutching her baby again somehow. The nurses were trying to calm her, but she kept repeating the same thing over and over. She made me say those things. She knows what she did. The baby's cries were getting weaker, muffled by how tightly she held him. I pushed past the security guard into the room. The second her eyes locked onto mine, pure hatred blazed in them. "Tell them about Florida," she screamed. "Tell them why I had to threaten my baby." Florida? My mind raced. I'd never been to Florida with her. We hadn't traveled together since we were kids. The confusion must have shown on my face because she laughed, that same unhinged sound from before. The hospital psychiatrist arrived then, a calm-looking woman with graying hair. My sister's demeanor shifted instantly. She started sobbing about losing her first baby, but then she kept saying October 15th over and over again. My blood ran cold. October 15th was when I'd announced my pregnancy. My mother turned to me with a strange look on her face. "Why didn't you tell me you visited her in October?" I didn't visit her, I insisted, but mom was already pulling out her phone. She showed me a photo that made my knees weak. It was me, standing at my sister's door, clearly pregnant, dated October 15th, but I had no memory of this at all. "You came to gloat," my sister screamed. "You told me you'd name him Xander to hurt me." The baby's cry stopped completely. Blood was pooling on the floor from where she'd torn her stitches. Security moved in fast, but I stood frozen, staring at that photo. How could I be somewhere I didn't remember going? Nurses grabbed the baby while I desperately checked my phone's location history for October 15th. It showed I was home all day, just like I remembered. But there was a 2-hour gap in the data, like my phone had been turned off or in airplane mode. My sister's husband burst through the door then, wild-eyed and frantic. "Is it true? Did you really visit her that day? She's been obsessed with your visit. She talks about it constantly." My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin who was in the waiting room. "Mom just told everyone about your October visit. What did you say to her?" The hospital social worker approached me carefully. She said the recording I'd provided was concerning, but asked why I hadn't mentioned the prior confrontation when I reported my sister's threats. I pulled up the report I'd filed online. My hands shook as I read details I didn't remember adding, mentions of previous contact, an escalating situation since October. Child Protective Services arrived to interview both families. They mentioned they needed to investigate the pattern of contact I'd apparently initiated. Pattern? What pattern? Later, in the hospital cafeteria, trying to process everything, my sister's neighbor approached me. "I saw you leaving that day, she said quietly. You looked really upset. What happened in there? I went home and immediately checked our doorbell camera footage from October 15th. My heart sank. It had been deleted, just that one day. The deletion log showed it was removed from my account, with my login credentials. My phone revealed more disturbing evidence. Sent text to my sister I didn't remember typing, thinking of you and hope you're okay, all throughout October. How was this possible? When I called my best friend, she hesitated before admitting something. You did mention wanting to visit her when you found out you were pregnant. You said something about making peace. I searched my car frantically and found a receipt from a coffee shop in my sister's town, dated October 15th, paid with my credit card. But I distinctly remembered being homesick that day. I'd even called into work. That night, I made a post on Facebook asking if anyone else had experienced missing memories during pregnancy. Within minutes, it was deleted by someone using my account. The next shot came from Xander's daycare. When I'd enrolled him months ago, I'd apparently listed my sister as an emergency contact in October, then removed her in November. The handwriting on the form looked like mine, but something about it seemed off. My sister's best friend reached out with screenshots of texts where I'd apparently apologized for what I said during the visit. The messages came from my number, but they didn't sound like me at all. The phrasing was wrong, too formal. I discovered my GPS history showed multiple trips to my sister's town throughout October that I had absolutely no memory of making. Each trip lasting hours, always during times I thought I was home or at work. My husband finally admitted he'd been worried about me in October. You were acting strange, taking long drives, not telling me where you were going. I thought it was pregnancy hormones. In our bedroom closet, hidden behind old maternity clothes, I found a pregnancy journal I didn't remember keeping. The entries talked about wanting to fix things with sister before baby comes. As I read through it, I noticed the handwriting deteriorating as the entries progressed, becoming almost frantic. The final journal entry was dated October 30th. Visited S again. She didn't answer. Left the letter under the door. I had no memory of any letter, any visits, any of this, but the evidence was overwhelming. Photos, receipts, texts, GPS data, witness accounts, they all pointed to the same impossible truth. I've been visiting my sister throughout October, saying things I couldn't remember, doing things that felt like another person entirely. My sister's lawyer sent a cease and desist letter the following week with attached doorbell footage that made my stomach drop. 5 separate videos showed me at her door throughout October, each visit more disturbing than the last. In the first, I looked normal, knocking politely. By the 5th video, I was pounding on the door, my face contorted with rage, clearly talking to someone who wasn't there. The timestamp on that last video showed 3:47 p.m. on October 28th. I pulled up my work calendar. I'd been in a client meeting at that exact time with 12 witnesses. My boss confirmed I'd never left the office that day. During my next OBGYN appointment, I mentioned the memory issues. Dr. Martinez looked through my chart with a frown. You asked me about this in November, she said slowly. About missing time during pregnancy? Don't you remember? I stared at her blankly. She showed me her notes from November 12th, detailed documentation of me describing blackouts and lost hours. The appointment had lasted 90 minutes. I had no memory of it whatsoever. That evening, I went through my email drafts and found unsent messages to my sister, all from October. The progression was chilling. They started friendly. Please talk to me, then desperate. I know you're home. The final draft, dated October 29th, made my hands shake. I'm going to use the name whether you like it or not. My mother called that night, her voice heavy with guilt. Your sister called me throughout October, she admitted, crying about you harassing her. I thought she was exaggerating, being dramatic like always, but she was terrified. I kept notes of every call. She emailed me her notes. 23 calls from my sister between October 15th and October 31st, each describing my visits in detail. According to my sister, I'd shown up increasingly agitated, demanding she talk to me about what happened with the baby. The next morning, my sister posted her medical records on social media, proof of stress-related bleeding throughout October. Her doctor's notes mentioned family harassment as a contributing factor. The comments section exploded with people calling me a monster. At my son's pediatrician appointment, the receptionist pulled up our October booking. You made this appointment for baby Xander on October 16th, she said cheerfully. My mouth went dry. October 16th was the day after I'd announced my pregnancy and supposedly visited my sister. I hadn't even picked the name officially until December. I hired a neurologist specializing in pregnancy-related cognitive issues, but when I called to confirm my appointment, they said I was already in their system. You saw Dr. Patel in November, the receptionist explained. Would you like to schedule a follow-up? Dr. Patel's report arrived by email. It described dissociative episodes likely triggered by childhood trauma anniversary. The report noted that I'd been resistant to acknowledging episodes despite clear evidence. Most disturbing was his final note. Patient denies episodes she's clearly experiencing. Everything clicked into place when I realized what October 15th represented. It was the 20th anniversary of the day my sister had told our parents about sleeping with my high school boyfriend, the day our relationship had shattered beyond repair. My sister's neighborhood had security cameras at the entrance. Her husband sent me the footage through his lawyer, my car circling the block for hours on multiple October dates. In one video from October 22nd, the camera caught me through my windshield. I was sobbing hysterically while driving in circles. She installed cameras after your first visit, her husband explained in a follow-up email. You seemed not yourself. It scared her. She thought you might hurt yourself or someone else. I made an emergency appointment with my therapist. Reading through her November session notes felt like reading about a stranger. She documented me processing guilt about confronting a family member, but noted I couldn't remember specific details. According to her notes, I'd been seeing her weekly throughout November to deal with family trauma resurfacing during pregnancy. My house revealed more evidence. Hidden in strange places, inside old shoeboxes, behind books, under the bathroom sink, I found drafted letters to my sister, photos of us as children, and pregnancy test strips dated from October. One letter, crumpled and water-stained, contained a single chilling line. You can have him back. Him, my high school boyfriend, our father, the baby. I couldn't tell what my October self had meant. My sister finally texted me directly. I forgive you for October. I know you weren't yourself, but please don't pretend it didn't happen. Get help. The 2-hour gap on October 15th consumed my thoughts. Security footage from various businesses showed my car traveling toward my sister's house. Then nothing. Then my car returning home 2 hours and 13 minutes later. What had happened during those missing hours? My sister's medical records, subpoenaed for the custody investigation, revealed the devastating truth. She had been pregnant before October and lost the baby on October 14th. The death certificate listed the baby's name, Xander. I checked my mother's phone records. She'd called me at 11:47 p.m. on October 14th. The call had lasted 43 minutes. She must have told me about my sister's loss, and the very next day, I'd announced my pregnancy. My mother broke down when I confronted her. I begged you to reach out to her, she sobbed. You promised to be sensitive. You said you'd wait to announce your pregnancy, but then the next morning, you posted it everywhere. My husband found my October 14th search history on our shared computer. The searches started at 11:52 p.m., right after mom's call. Pregnancy announcement ideas, unique baby names, Xander name meaning. The timestamp showed I'd searched for the name Xander specifically at 12:23 a.m. on October 15th, hours after learning my sister had just lost lost a baby with that name. The horror of what I'd done crashed over me. I'd found out my sister lost her baby Xander, then announced my pregnancy with the same name the very next day. No wonder she'd broken down. No wonder she thought I'd done it to hurt her. I drove to my sister's house, desperate for answers about those October visits. She wouldn't see me, but her husband met me at a coffee shop. He played the doorbell audio from my first visit. My own voice, strange and distant, floated from his phone. I've always loved the name Xander. I'm going to use it. Searching through my deleted texts, I found messages to my husband from October 15th. Visited sister. It went badly. I think I said something terrible. But when I asked him about it, he had no memory of receiving those texts. My best friend finally revealed the whole truth about October 15th. I drove you to your sister's house, she admitted. You called me after your mom told you about the baby. You were hysterical, not making sense. I didn't think you should drive. She described the drive in painful detail. You kept repeating, she can't have everything over and over. You seemed like you were in some kind of trance. When we got there, you told me to wait in the car. You were inside for 2 hours. When you came out, you seemed calm, almost serene. You said everything was fine and asked me to take you home. I had no memory of any of it. Not the call to my friend, not the drive, not the visit, nothing. An emergency therapy session focused on trauma-induced dissociation. You may have experienced a complete dissociative episode upon hearing about the name connection, my therapist explained. Your mind couldn't process the coincidence that you'd both chosen the same name independently, but then the deeper connection hit me. Xander was short for Alexander, our father's name, the name he'd always said he'd give to a son, if he'd ever had one. We were both trying to honor our dead father through our babies. My sister's husband showed me her journal entries from October. She came here to hurt me, one entry read. She knew about Xander. She chose that name to destroy me, but other entries showed confusion. Can't remember what happened after she left. Why do I have bruises on my arms? Did I do this to myself? My mother revealed the final piece of the puzzle. Your father wanted a son so badly, she whispered. He used to say if he had a boy, he'd name him after himself, Alexander. He'd call you both his failed attempts at Alexander. I thought you'd both forgotten. We hadn't forgotten. We'd internalized it so deeply that we'd both chosen to name our sons after the father who'd seen us as disappointments. We were fighting over a dead man's approval, using our babies to win a competition that existed only in our traumatized minds. I started recovering memories in fragments, standing at my sister's door, her face when she saw me, pregnant and glowing, the words spilling from my mouth like poison, but the memories felt dreamlike, disconnected from reality. A hypnotherapy session revealed the worst of it. Under hypnosis, I recalled telling my sister, Dad would have loved my baby more. It was the cruelest thing I could have said to a woman who'd just lost a child. The therapist had to end the session when I became hysterical. My sister started leaving voicemails at all hours. Remember when Dad used to call us his failed attempts at Alexander? Remember how he'd look at us with such disappointment? Remember how we promised each other we'd never let him win? Our husbands met secretly to discuss their concerns. I found out when my husband accidentally left his email open. They were both considering leaving us, taking the babies, convinced we were dangerous to our children. They'd been documenting our behavior, building cases for sole custody. The most unsettling discovery came during couples therapy. My husband revealed that I'd been having the same nightmare for months, our father holding a baby boy, turning away from us in disgust. My sister's husband reported she'd been having identical dreams. A court-ordered psychological evaluation was devastating. The evaluator noted we both showed signs of complex PTSD from childhood trauma, triggered by pregnancy and parenthood. The sisters are remarkably similar in their pathology, the report stated. Both are reliving childhood trauma through their infants. The family court judge ordered supervised visitation only. Both of us lost full custody temporarily, our babies placed with our husbands' families while we underwent mandatory trauma therapy. The courtroom scene was surreal. Two sisters who hadn't spoken in decades, sitting side by side, losing their children for the same reason. In group therapy for trauma survivors, we met another woman dealing with similar sister dynamics. She pulled us aside after one session. I had a sister like you two, she said quietly. We fought over our father's love until the day she died. She took her own life rather than lose to me. Don't let it get that far. The court mandated joint therapy sessions. The first time my sister and I sat in the same room intentionally in 20 years, neither of us could speak. We just stared at each other, two women destroyed by the same ghost. Our therapist made us confront the core issue. You're not fighting over a name, she said gently. You're fighting over who deserved to exist in your father's eyes. We both started crying simultaneously, the same broken sound from two throats. During one session, I remembered another detail from October. I told my sister about my previous pregnancy losses, 3 of them over the years. Each baby had been named Alexander in my mind. I'd been trying to give my father his son for 2 decades. My sister's confession mirrored mine. She'd lost 4 pregnancies, all boys she'd planned to name Alexander. We'd both been caught in the same cycle, trying to birth our father's approval. She admitted she'd been having blackouts too. Security footage from my apartment building showed her there multiple times in November and December, standing outside, staring up at my windows. She had no memory of these visits. Our mothers-in-law filed for grandparent rights, citing our shared delusion as evidence we were unfit mothers. The legal documents described us as 2 women so damaged by childhood trauma that they pose a risk to their own children. The family court judge asked a question that shattered us both. Have either of you considered that your father's name might be triggering these episodes? That naming your children after him is perpetuating the cycle of trauma? We discovered the final devastating truth when we pulled our father's death certificate. He had died on October 15th, 30 years ago. Every October 15th, we'd been reliving the trauma of his death. My sister had lost her first pregnancy on October 15th 5 years ago. I'd lost one 3 years ago on the same date. Our mother finally told us the whole truth about our father. He'd been emotionally abusive, specifically about not having sons. He'd blamed us for being girls, told us we were disappointments, made us compete for scraps of affection. I thought I was protecting you by never talking about it, she wept. I thought you'd forget. My sister and I pieced together what had happened on October 15th. We'd both dissociated completely. Security footage from that day showed something impossible. We were both at each other's houses at the same time. I was at her door while she was at mine. 2 traumatized women acting out scenarios with ghosts. A neurologist specializing in trauma explained it was possible we'd both experienced simultaneous fugue states. Your brains were trying to rewrite history, he explained, to fix what couldn't be fixed. I found videos on my phone I didn't remember taking. Hours of footage of me practicing conversations with my sister, talking to empty rooms. My sister had similar videos on her phone. We'd been rehearsing confrontations that never actually happened. The blank paper I'd supposedly left under her door turned out to be exactly that, blank. My sister's husband found it tucked behind their doormat, completely empty except for my smudged fingerprints. The conversations we remembered having with each other were actually monologues with ourselves, captured on our phone's voice memo apps. Our sons met for the first time at the supervised visitation center 3 weeks later. They looked nothing alike except for the haunted expressions on their mothers' faces as we watched them through the observation window. Both boys were calm, happy, completely unaware of the storm swirling around their existence. That night, I discovered something that made my hands shake. My sister and I had been texting each other in our sleep. Entire conversations neither of us remembered having. The messages revealed our deepest fear in stark digital clarity. We were becoming our father, obsessed with a name, destroying destroying our families over something that meant nothing to anyone but us. During the next therapy session, I suggested we both change the babies' names. My sister's reaction was visceral. She clutched the arms of her chair so hard her knuckles went white. "Then he wins," she whispered. "Then we're still the failures." The he was our dead father, still controlling us from beyond the grave. A groundskeeper at the cemetery called my mother the following week. He'd noticed something strange. 2 women visiting the same grave on the 15th of every month, leaving toys for Alexander. Security footage confirmed what he suspected. We'd both been visiting Dad's grave regularly, sometimes missing each other by minutes. But then came the revelation that changed everything. The groundskeeper mentioned that sometimes we came together, having what appeared to be normal conversations at the graveside before leaving separately. Neither of us had any memory of these joint visits. The cemetery's security footage was undeniable. There we were, month after month, meeting at Dad's grave. In these dissociated states, we called each other by our childhood nicknames, names we hadn't used in 20 years. We'd hug, talk calmly, even laugh together before getting in our separate cars and driving away with no conscious memory of the encounter. Our therapist suggested something that terrified us both. Our conscious minds couldn't handle reconciliation, so our traumatized parts were meeting in secret, maintaining a relationship we couldn't access in our waking lives. The question became whether to undergo intensive therapy to integrate these dissociated parts and recover all the memories. The risk was complete psychological breakdown. The potential reward was freedom from the cycle that had trapped us for 30 years. We agreed to try, holding hands in the waiting room like the children we'd once been. The first session of intensive trauma therapy revealed memories I'd buried so deep they felt like fiction. My sister and I had once protected each other from Dad's rages. We'd taken beatings for one another, lied to cover for each other, been inseparable allies against his disappointment. The memory that had split us apart surfaced during the third session. The day Dad had said he'd love us if we were boys. We'd fought over who would become Alexander for him, not physically. We'd competed to be more like the son he wanted. Sports, short hair, rejection of anything feminine. We'd turned on each other in desperation for his approval. The treatment worked too well. Memories flooded back faster than either of us could process. Things we'd done to each other as children that perfectly mirrored our adult behavior. The same patterns, the same desperate competition, the same wounds inflicted over and over. Both of us ended up hospitalized briefly when the memories became too intense. Our babies remained in custody with their fathers while we struggled to piece together our shattered psyches. The irony wasn't lost on us. We'd lost our children while trying to heal from losing our father's love. Then my mother made a discovery that shattered everything we thought we knew. While cleaning out the attic, she found Dad's journal from before we were born. Page after page revealed the truth. He'd never wanted children at all. Alexander wasn't even a name he'd chosen. It was his own father's name, a man he'd despised. The name that had destroyed our lives meant nothing to him. He'd been indifferent to us, not disappointed. We'd invented the rejection, created the competition, destroyed ourselves over a phantom preference that had never existed. Mom confirmed what the journal revealed. He'd barely noticed us, too wrapped up in his own struggles to care what we were named or who we became. My sister and I met at Dad's grave one last time, both fully conscious, both remembering everything. We stood there in silence, staring at the headstone of a man who'd never thought about us as much as we'd thought about him. The decision to change our sons' names came simultaneously, not from shame or defeat, but from a desperate need to free them from the weight of our trauma. At the courthouse, we filled out the paperwork separately, agreeing not to share our choices until after the legal changes were complete. When the clerk handed us our copies, we looked at each other's forms. Both of us had chosen names that meant peace in different languages. Not because we'd planned it, but because that's all either of us wanted anymore. Peace from the war we'd inherited and perpetuated. Joint custody was restored 6 months later with mandatory weekly therapy sessions. We were different people by then, or perhaps we were finally the people we'd always been underneath the trauma. The supervised visitation reports noted our marked improvement in emotional regulation and interpersonal functioning. The first time we took our sons to the park together without supervision, we sat on opposite benches, not ready for more proximity, but no longer fleeing from each other's presence. The boys played in the sandbox between us, babbling in the universal language of toddlers, oblivious to the significance of the moment. They looked like brothers, because that's what they were. Cousins bound by their mother's shared wounds and tentative healing. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "I remember loving you once." I typed back, "I remember too." We didn't hug or cry or have a dramatic reconciliation. We simply sat there, 2 women learning to exist in the same space without war. 1 year later, we developed a routine that worked for us. Every month, we met at a diner exactly halfway between our homes. We never sat together. Instead, we took adjacent booths, sitting back to back, our sons in high chairs beside us. We didn't speak directly, but we could hear each other ordering, soothing our children, existing. It was the most intimate relationship 2 strangers who shared everything could manage. We couldn't be sisters in the traditional sense, too much damage, too many scars. But we could be this, 2 women who'd stopped fighting our father's ghost, raising our sons without the burden of a name that had nearly destroyed us. The waitress who served us every month once asked if we knew each other, noting how we always came in at the same time and sat in the same arrangement. My sister answered before I could, "We used to." And that was the truth. We used to know each other, before trauma split us into fragments. Now we were learning something harder than reconciliation, how to simply coexist, how to stop the cycle without forcing a closeness that might shatter us again. Our sons would grow up knowing each other, but not the story that had almost prevented their existence. They'd be cousins without the weight of their mother's history, free to form their own relationship without the ghost of Alexander haunting their playgrounds. The last entry in my therapy journal summed up what we'd achieved. Not healing, but a cessation of harm. Not sisterhood, but an end to war. Not what we dreamed, but more than we dared hope. And in the quiet spaces between our back-to-back breathing at the diner, in the sound of our sons playing with the same toys without competition, in the simple act of showing up month after month without fleeing, there was something that might eventually grow into peace.